Before you go to the judiciary,
Yeah.
let me pull you back a little still on the most especially the Nigerian police force, because normally they should be at the forefront
Yes.
of nipping it in the bud of insecurity in the country. Now, when we look at the Nigerian police, which you said is about 400,000 or thereabouts of police officers trying to police more like 200 million people, the authorities knows about these things. Now, let's put in the picture this administration. The authorities knows about this. So what kind of plan do you think they should be putting in place? Because as society, as the Nigerian population grow, there are other things that we need to also increase intentionally to make sure that if it's about fighting crime, it's about making economic provisions available for the teeming mass of the people. These things are brought to the level whereby it can absorb the growing population without it having a spillover that will cause such a security breach or menace that will endanger the life of Nigerians.
Yeah, when you look at it, crime just doesn't occur and keeps growing like in our own case. It's also aided by poverty, unemployment, and underemployment in the country. We are growing very fast. The population is rising very fast, faster than what we can provide in terms of infrastructure, jobs. 3/4 of our graduates graduating every year cannot even find a job, in the country. And if the economy is not growing as fast as the population is growing, you are bound to have a problem. So we now have an army of unemployed graduates who have no clue on how to earn a living. The second category of people who are povertized or underemployed or unemployed, it's the kids. We have roughly about 15 million street kids in the country who they have no clue what to do for a living. They sleep under bridges, they sleep anywhere where they can spend the night, and then the next day they are back on the street trying to earn a living. When they can't get arms, then you see these kids resorting to committing violent crimes. So you have that on one part, but on the other part, government can only do so much. But as long as government is thinking of investing in infrastructure without thinking about what to do about the population boom, then we are bound to continually have deficit of infrastructure. That is inevitable. You look at the other part, because it's also an entire strings around criminal justice system. What about the issue of deterrence? Because it's better to prevent crime from happening than to allow it to happen. Once a crime happens, you spend enormous resources investigating and prosecuting before you can achieve deterrence, because it's when somebody is found guilty, convicted by the court, then you deter, other people will learn from it, and that can deter crime. But that will cost a lot of money. What about preventing crimes to start with? How do we ensure that we are tough on crime and we are also tough on the causes of crime, which largely is poverty, is unemployment, particularly youth unemployment? How do we ensure we do this? It's only the government that can provide answers to many of these things, because when you talk about population growth, we knew what China did, to curb its own population boom, while they try to encourage people to have 1 or 2 kids. Other countries have tried it before. We saw what happened in Britain, when suddenly they were experiencing some population boom due to migration and increase in birth. Then they decided, to restrict welfare benefits to, I think it's the first 2 or 3 kids. And that's one of the ways in which they try to discourage population boom. But in our own situation, we are doing nothing to address those problems. We are faced with huge infrastructural deficit. We are faced with huge unemployment problem. We are faced with hungry people walking our street knowing they don't know what to do. We are faced with a huge migration from rural areas to the urban areas, thereby creating a major problem in the urban areas, while at the same time the rural areas has no single infrastructure. Go to many of them. Schools, where you have schools, some kids would have to travel 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers to go to school. And parents can't afford the money in the rural areas. The roads are terrible, they are deplorable. We are not even helping the farmers. What about constructing rural roads to facilitate movement of goods, to urban markets? So there are a lot of work that needs to be done around this issue. You cannot tackle crime simply by focusing on arrest and investigation and prosecution. you have to focus on the causes of the crime, which is one, how do we encourage youths? How do we encourage people to settle in the rural areas? Are you building housing infrastructure in the rural areas? Public housing in the rural areas? No. What about road construction, water,
job provision
center,
in the rural areas?
in the rural areas? What about deliberate policy? Let me give you a good example. I was in UK when the UK government felt that London was getting too congested, and they decided to redeploy some of the government departments. They call them department, what we call ministries here, departments, to outside London, to different cities outside London. So that was what they did. So those staff moved with it, with the population moving with it. So there are things which we can do rather than centralizing, our bureaucracy. You can decentralize your bureaucracy with a view to shift population, shift services